And we're live here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate everybody being here on a Thursday night for an 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time live stream. We're just coming back from our Miami stream with Cam Underwood from State of the U over on the Miami channel. So we hope you will check that out if you weren't able to join us live. So my apologies for being here a little bit late, but it is a back-to-back situation. So if you get those notifications or you see on the community page where we post the schedule, I will do that every morning where I will say Friday live schedule, bam, 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 bam. Saturday live schedule, whatever the case might be. You can find all the live stream scheduling right there on the main channel on the community page each and every morning. And so when you see a back-to-back on different channels, especially, you know that we're going to be a few minutes late. So we appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football as we are less than 20 days away from games that matter. UCLA, Hawaii, Nebraska, Illinois on that opening weekend on that Saturday. That would be August 28th. A little over 2 weeks away, 2 weeks and a few days. So we're looking at 16 days away from college football. I believe that makes the math 23 for most of you with your teams in play the following Saturday, September 4th. All right. I will run through the comments and the questions. We are waiting. The Golden Blue dude. Oh, as we speak, look at that. He's jumping on right now. Golden Blue dude, how's it going, man?
It's going great, bud. How are you doing?
Can
you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. I can. Awesome. I hope everybody else can. Appreciate you stopping by tonight. Talk some college football.
Oh, man, I'm obsessed with it. Anytime I get a chance to talk college football, I'm there.
All right. Easy. I know where I can find a guest then.
Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Well, for anybody that's not familiar, head on over right here on YouTube to Golden Blue Dude. Check out his work. Does some nice work concerning West Virginia, the ACC, the Big 12, the nation, because he's eyeing that ACC, I know.
Oh, yes.
We can start there in regards to your thoughts about West Virginia joining the ACC. And I know that when I've commented on that, it gains a lot of debate from both sides. So make your bullet point statement for why the ACC should take in West Virginia.
Well, there's some obvious reasons right off the bat. I mean, geography, West Virginia fits, snug in the ACC. They're right smack dab in the middle of it. And to go along with that, it's kind of the same point, but still different. And that's the built-in rivalries. They have built-in rivalries with Pitt, Virginia Tech, Boston College, Syracuse, Miami, and even Louisville. People forget that rivalry with Louisville. That was a pretty good rivalry going on. So immediately they're going to bring eyeballs to those rivalry games. So those institutions I mentioned, they're going to get more revenue and eyeballs because of the TV market. And that's another thing that people get confused on. West Virginia actually has a bigger TV market than people realize. It's not just the population of West Virginia. West Virginia is a small state. If you compare the TV market, based on the population, then yeah, it doesn't look like a big TV market. But West Virginia's fan base is all over the country, and their alumni is pretty big. So they will bring some revenue in. So I think all that stuff, and the fact that West Virginia is having major success in basketball right now, and Neil Brown is building something great at West Virginia right now. They have a top 20 recruiting class, and I found out earlier that 3 of our 3-star recruits have actually been upgraded to a 4-star. So our recruiting class is even better. So there's a lot of great things to like about West Virginia. I just think they're a great fit for the ACC. I think the biggest question is, who are they going to bring in with West Virginia? I'm having inside sources telling me the same thing, and I make sure I do this on purpose. I ask them separately, so I'm not making sure they're cooperating with each other. Separate sources, and they're all saying the ACC is planning on bringing in West Virginia. The question is, who are they going to bring in with West Virginia? I would have to vote Notre Dame. I think they're working with Notre Dame, because if you think about it, Notre Dame actually okayed that 12-team expansion. And what's one of the rules? you have to be a top 4 conference champion to get that first round bye. I don't think Notre Dame would okay that if they were planning on staying independent in the long term.
Yeah, I definitely thought that that was a bit of a tip-off at that point, and that was before all this Texas-Oklahoma business and the conference expansion. So at that point, we didn't necessarily have any indication that the dominoes were going to start to fall across the country. And I thought it was a bit odd that Notre Dame would agree so easily to that type of situation, because if you can get a bye in that 12-team playoff, that's huge, obviously.
Exactly.
Versus playing one of the 5 to 10 best teams in the country for an extra game just to get to the second round. And I've cried and whined and moaned and all sorts of stuff on here concerning the 12-team playoff and why it doesn't make sense. But that's I was going to say for another conversation, but not necessarily. We could move on, because I just want to clarify before we move on from the ACC in West Virginia. Because, yeah, the population statistics are what they are. So you can draw that basic conclusion that, okay, this is the state, this is the population, the TV market size, this is what they bring to the table. But there are certainly, you know, if you're going to compare West Virginia to Maryland or Rutgers, I'll take those two that were added to the Big Ten, that on the surface, yeah, Baltimore, New York City, Washington, D.C., and the state of Maryland, that seems like a great get, but those are not dedicated fan bases. They just aren't, especially Rutgers, but really both of them nowhere close to West Virginia. I've known since I was a little tyke that West Virginia's got a very loyal fan base. I don't know how large it is, but you're telling me that the TV ratings would say that they do better than what a lot of people would expect.
Right, and they would add to those rivalries. You know, let's take, okay, just for instance, we'll say Syracuse is playing a Virginia Tech, or no, I'll say Syracuse is playing a Virginia, right? It might do okay, but you take out Virginia, and throw in a West Virginia game, that rating is going to go much higher. Number one, you're bringing in West Virginia fans. Number two, Syracuse fans are going to be much more interested in watching a Syracuse-West Virginia game than a Syracuse-Virginia. And you could go across the board with that. Pitt, you know, Virginia Tech, Louisville, Boston College, Miami, you know, all those institutions, same exact scenario.
Yeah, so West Virginia and Notre Dame to the ACC. I believe that those are the two that would most likely help the conference the most, that geographically makes sense. And of course, Notre Dame, not necessarily from a geographic standpoint, but they have already built that relationship. So it's already established and people are pretty comfortable with it right now. Although I do like the UCF combination.
Yep.
I don't hear a whole lot of people talking about this, but I think that that would be a great get for the ACC. It's a group of 5. Yeah.
They have potential. I think here's a point that I missed earlier that just popped in my head when I was thinking about this show. We all know that it's come out that Florida State and Clemson have had talks with the SEC. Not necessarily they're going or whatever, but they've had talks with them, right? Well, what's the surefire way to keep Clemson and Florida State in the ACC? Notre Dame.
That's a great point. It's a great point. Love them or hate them, they bring a bunch of cachet and power and credibility and name brand recognition, the whole deal. They bring all of it, and the ACC should do their best to wrap that up.
Yes.
No question about that. But those 3 seem to be the most viable ones. Certainly West Virginia and Notre Dame would be the first 2, and then UCF is kind of a wild card. But I like the size of the school. It's one of the biggest schools in the country in terms of enrollment. Therefore, you've got potential for alumni down the road, and they already have a huge alumni base, but it's only going to grow as more and more students graduate. And you've got the Orlando market with all this NIL, the big celebrity type market size base there with Disney and so forth, and the recruiting footprint in the state of Florida just to be strengthened there for the other ACC teams.
Yeah, I don't know why people have Cincinnati so high on the list. what they try to do is they try to say, the city of Cincinnati has a large population, so they're bringing that TV market. That's not true at all. Ohio State owns the state of Ohio, including, I'd say, at least 75% of the city of Cincinnati. So as far as the TV market goes, Cincinnati wouldn't bring much in terms of that at all. And Cincinnati has only been having recent success. And if we want to talk about the past, Cincinnati has already had their chance at being a Power 5 in the Big East. They didn't do so well.
Yeah, and I have this experience from growing up about 45 minutes south of Cleveland. And if it's an NFL town, which Cincinnati, of course, is, forget it. It's Ohio State and it's the Bengals, and Cincinnati has to be like red hot to wake anybody up. And of course they have been, and you can't get fooled or suckered in by the hot commodity right this second. Cincinnati's not going 11-2 every year for decades. That's not what they've been. They're hot and cold. They're all over the place. It's like Memphis. Mike Norvell put them in a certain place after Justin Fuente, both those coaches. But, Memphis has been all over the map as well. Houston's been all over the map. You can't count on them being Cincinnati, what they are right now under Luke Fickell.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think the two most consistent group of fives, if a Power 5 conference was going to take a chance, I would say Boise State and UCF have been the most consistent teams out of the group of five. So if you're going to take a chance on a group of five team, it has to be one of those two teams.
Yeah, historically, from a winning standpoint, over 2 decades now, Boise State's been winning. So for UCF, it's a little bit more about potential. And of course, they, for the most part, have been really good since they won a Fiesta Bowl against Baylor in 2013. And then they took that dip before Scott Frost got there and resurrected it. And they've had, obviously, some big seasons since. We're right here with the Golden Blue Dude. Check him out right here on YouTube if you have yet to do so. Big West Virginia guy, but loves to talk college football across the board. I brought up this 12-team playoff. So before I say anything about it, and for the folks that watch me on a regular basis, they've heard enough out of me. How did it hit you?
To be honest with you,
that's really what we're looking for.
It really didn't hit me because, the night of the national champion, and true story, this really happened. You can check it out on my channel. The night of the national championship, instead of making a video on the national championship, I made a video on expanding the playoffs. And my format is the format that they rolled out. I came out with a 12-team format, buys to the top 4 seeds. That particular night, I didn't implement the home playoff game. That came a little bit later. But basically, I'm like, duh, of course. This makes the most sense. The thing that was aggravating me is taking baby steps. I was afraid they'd go from 4 and then to 6. We'll try the 6, for a while. If that's not good enough, then we'll try the 8. No, get to the right recipe right now. And when I looked over everything, 12 teams is the right recipe. You're still keeping in incentives for those top 4 seeds. So teams that know that they're already going to be in still have a reason to bring their A game and not rest some starters in certain games. And, first ever home playoff games, that's amazing. I think this is an incredible idea. The sooner that they can implement it, the better. I think it's going to help the ratings. We watch home playoff games in all sports. NHL has amazing home playoff games. The NBA, great home playoff games. MLB, NFL, college football, it's going to be crazy, man. I think this is a great idea. And I think it'll bring more importance to the conference championship games because people are complaining, that the conference championships, now it's more of a liability. Now you're risking, missing the playoffs if you were to have a down game and lose that game. Well, now it's actually an incentive to win that game and get that bye week because you're going to get a top 4 spot. And you're not necessarily going to get kicked out of the playoffs because they're expanding to 12.
Yeah, you make a good point there because if you go through the college football playoff from 2014 through 20 and you expand it out to 12 or 16, and then you apply that 12 or 16 teams to those various years, you have a lot of situations where the teams that lost conference championship games dropped out of what would have been the college football playoff 12. Now, we don't know if the committee would have approached it differently, knowing, hey, not only are we selecting 4, we're selecting 12, and maybe their approach would have been different. But based on their rankings, which are supposed to be 1 through 25, what they believe are the top 25 teams in the country in order, there is year after year after year after year where a Wisconsin, for example, goes to the Big Ten championship game. They're well within the 12. They lose. They go to 10-3. They drop out of the 12. So that's ridiculous. If you're losing to one of the best teams in the country and that's knocking you out of the playoffs, then what's the incentive to make the championship game? So I completely agree with you that they did a great job of incentivizing the conference championship games. I like that. I like the expansion to a certain degree, because I hope it's been proven by now that everybody who makes a claim that says, well, the season's going to get watered down and the games are going to be less meaningful, really it's the opposite. The games are going to be more meaningful. There are going to be more meaningful games. Yes, you can take small little snippets of games. There is a possibility that Alabama can take a game off at 11-0 and playing Auburn, and they are still qualified for the SEC championship game. And so those are going to be so.
But I don't think they're going to take infrequent. A game off for a rivalry, though.
No, I don't think so either. And I think those instances are going to be so infrequent, where right now, the last 2 weeks of the season, there's a handful of games every week that count toward the college football playoff, where there's going to be dozens of games that count toward the playoff. Right now, an Auburn LSU game, when they're both 7-2, is just a nice game to watch. Good game, 2 really good teams, but doesn't really mean anything in terms of a championship. But now that game's going to mean a lot, because it's going to knock one of them out and the other one's going to still have a chance.
The biggest example that I can think of, I can't think of the year. I'm sure you will, but I think it was the Big 12 championship, and it was Kansas State versus Oklahoma, and everybody was super sure that Oklahoma is going to win it. And had they would have won that game, they would have been in the national championship. What happens? Kansas State beats them and knocks them out of the picture. I think if that happens this year, it would knock them down, but that Oklahoma team would have still had a shot at a national championship.
Okay. I'm a little confused by that scenario, because 1998 was the year that Texas A&M upset Kansas State and knocked them out of the BCS championship game. Now, it was in 2003 that Oklahoma and Kansas State played in the Big 12 championship game, and Kansas State obliterated Oklahoma 35-7, but Oklahoma still had enough points in the BCS and enough cachet to still hang on to its spot and make the championship game. So anyway, this is what I don't like. This is what, and maybe it's another year that I'm not thinking of, that I need to come up with. So are we talking about that long ago, or was this recently?
No, you're correct. That was the exact game I was thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah, that was it.
So this is what I don't like. So follow my thinking here. I don't like the buys.
Okay.
I don't think the buys work, and this is why. So right out of the gate, we've given this committee all authority. So they decide who gets in, who doesn't get in, and now we're giving them an extra layer of authority to say these 4 teams get a huge advantage. And why buys work to a certain extent in the NFL in particular is because those teams earned it based on a objective system. We know that if the Kansas City Chiefs are 13-3 and they won their division, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are 11-5 and won their division, we know that they played very similar schedules. Similar schedules. Probably 10 of their games out of 16 are exact. So that 13-3 versus that 11-5 is a legitimate reason to say they earned the bye.
Right.
Okay, in college football, we're going to have a bunch of 12-1 teams that won conference championships, and really good teams playing, let's say, in the SEC that are 11-2, that most people are going to think, well, they're actually better than a conference champion. We're going to have so it's going to be up to the committee to determine, well, which 4 out of these 5 are going to earn the spots. And this is what I don't like about the buys, and this is why I think they're such a huge advantage. Okay, let's put your West Virginia Mountaineers. Let's make this a real scenario so you can feel a little bit in your gut about this scenario. So this is going to mean a little bit more to you. Let's say West Virginia wins the Big 12 or whatever conference they're going to be, the ACC, and let's say they are, well, the 4 conference champions. Let's see, we're only so one of them is going to be left out,
right?
Yeah. So let's say West Virginia is the 5 seed. Let's say we got 5 conference champions that are all 12-1. Yeah. And West Virginia is one of them. So they get left out as the 5 seed. So they've got to play the 12 seed. So let's say that's they're playing Wisconsin. They're playing a good Wisconsin team that's 10-2. And that's their first round game. While the other 4 teams get to sit for a week. Okay, let's say West Virginia is going to play. So if they win, they're playing the 4 seed.
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to play the 4 seed. So let's say the 4 seed is Oklahoma. Oklahoma's 12-1. So they got to play. So here's the scenario.
Well, if West Virginia won the Big 12, it couldn't be.
I was moving. Well,
you're saying West Virginia's the ACC. I got you.
I shouldn't have made it so confusing. My bad. But if everybody can follow me along, regardless of the conferences, West Virginia wins a conference championship. They're 12-1. Other teams are 12-1, winning conference championships, but the committee's got to make a decision, and this is going to happen all the time.
Yeah,
where they got to make a decision of who gets left out of this bye system. Okay, so we know that there are going to be conference championship games played the first Saturday of December, and then the next day we're going to get that 12-team playoff, and it's all going to be unveiled. Okay, so for that first playoff game should be in 2 weeks from that date. That first round playoff game will be 2 weeks after the championship games. And then the second round game is going to be 3 weeks away. So West Virginia is going to have to be fully focused on Wisconsin. They can't be thinking about Oklahoma. It's going to be tough enough for them to get past Wisconsin. So Wisconsin and West Virginia have to be tunnel focused, game planning, strategy, everything focused on each other. And Oklahoma gets to sit for 3 weeks. They not only get to game plan for both of those teams, they get to watch film from all season on Wisconsin and West Virginia. Yeah. But as soon as that game's played, obviously they can throw one out and then just focus on the other. On top of that, they get to see both of them play. And on top of that, what if somebody gets hurt?
Yeah.
What if somebody significant gets hurt, which is a pretty high probability. And even if they don't get hurt, guys,
that probability goes through the roof. You're right.
And even if nobody gets hurt, like knocked out of the game, we know there's wear and tear. It's a football game. It's going to be a tough football game. I just think it's a huge advantage.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And to be honest with you, I think that probably went into this format as far as the way they were thinking about it, but they weren't thinking about it the way we're thinking about it. They're thinking about it, hey, we're rewarding the 4 best teams, the 4 best conference champions, and the others, they didn't do what they're supposed to do to get to that second layer. But there's more stuff to think about, what basically what you just mentioned. So now that you think about it, there's more layers to this than just, hey, we're expanding to 12 teams, bye week to the top 4 champions, and then the next 4 get a home playoff game. That sounds good in a nutshell. But whenever we're breaking it down like this, the teams that get the bye week, they get the advantage of game planning for both teams, and then, throw out the playbook to the one who loses, and then the 2 teams that are playing, injuries. So I actually do agree with that, and I didn't think about that before. That's a great point.
But you also made a great point, Golden Blue Dude, in that if maybe Notre Dame knew something when they were good with 4 conference champions being selected, then maybe everybody knew something that Texas and Oklahoma are leaving the Big 12. The Big 12 is not going to be a Power 5 anymore. Expand the Big 12, or it's going to be an American conference type. So we only have 4 conferences, and the 4 conferences go with the 4 buys, and it all works out. Nice.
Oh, you better believe all this has been. I mean, we already know that Texas and Oklahoma have been talking to the SEC for 6 months, and Texas A&M was mad about that because they were not, in the loop on that. So that's why I'm not going to be surprised when West Virginia goes to ACC. I'm not going to be surprised. Right now, I'm going to say I'm 80% sure that Notre Dame's going to go in the ACC because this 12-team playoff expansion format was introduced with all this stuff going on, behind closed doors that we didn't know about. So to us, it's like 12-team format. 4, they're rewarding 4 of the top champions, but 1 Power 5. Well, if one of the Power 5 conferences is not there anymore, then you really don't have to worry about that. So I never thought of it that way, but it makes sense like that. If the Big 12 doesn't exist, then you don't have to worry about leaving out a Power 5 conference champion.
So if that all comes together, then I will be applauding, cheering, jumping up and down and say, you nailed it. I'm good with it now. That's my only reservation in all this. And I love the first round games on campus. Yeah,
I think we talked our way through that one because I think going into this show, of course, we're thinking 5 Power 5s. One's going to be left out. How would they choose it? But now that we've talked through it, I don't think they're going to have to worry about that decision. There's going to be 4 Power 4 conferences. Nobody gets left out. And then I don't know about the first round, though, like group of 5 champions or just the those rules haven't been specified other than, the next best teams. What criteria does that fit? Is it, according to the FBI? Is it according to the next best champions of the group of 5? What exact criteria does that entail?
Isn't it going to be the College Football Playoff Selection Committee's rankings?
Yeah, exactly. And who knows what they're going to – I mean, they've proven that they're, off the wall sometimes. You're like, how did they come up with that? So, I mean, you name it, it could happen, really.
Well, I'm basically – almost completely okay with this system if we get down to 4 conferences.
Yeah, it makes way more sense. I agree.
Because I had a big issue with the buys if they weren't earned, which again, a conference championship is good enough for me, but one gets left out, and how do you make that decision?
Other than personal opinion. That's what it would come down to.
Yeah. There's been way too much of that.
Exactly.
Way too much of that.
That's the biggest problem with it right now. I mean, can't do that.
Got the golden blue dude here.
Factor.
What's that?
That can't be the deciding factor. Maybe part of it, but it seems like especially over the past 4 or 5 years, it's been the deciding factor. Think about Nick Saban. He threw a fit that who was it? Ohio State got in as a non-champion, and then it was either the following year or 2 years later, Alabama got in as a non-champion. He's like, no. It's all about the 4 best teams. It's what suits you at that exact moment. That's why I really hope that they nail down this criteria. That way it's not, it doesn't look like they're changing their minds year after year. Well, no, it's this way. Well, no, it's that way. Set it down. That way we know what to expect.
We're on the line with the golden blue dude. So if you're unfamiliar, head on, keep it right here on YouTube. Just put golden blue dude right into the search bar, and you'll find him right there. And you'll check out his college football coverage. It's really good stuff. So please lock it in there.
I got a question for you, Mark. I got a question for you. How many, and I've been thinking about this recently, how many sub-channels do you have as far as, for specific teams? Because I'm thinking West Virginia could be one of your sub channels, and you got a person here that could fit the bill for you on that.
I know I got one. Oh man, I lost count. I can't even give you a count. I think it's 22, 23.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing.
Well,
and I watch some from time, like in Ohio State. who was it? In Oklahoma, and there was one Alabama. Yeah, so it's good stuff. I like it, but I think West Virginia needs one too.
West Virginia.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to announce it quite yet, but there might be another addition that you're not going to be real happy with, considering, you know, your stance with the Mountaineers there. But it's kind of close to home.
Well,
But,
I get along with all fan bases, and if it's the fan base or the team that I'm thinking of, yeah, I would be not thrilled about it, but you know, it's okay. I get along with. In fact, I have several subscribers from that department, I'll call it, and we actually get along. Yeah, we talk trash, but there's some actual sensible fans from that institution, surprisingly.
so what have you been working on recently?
You name it, I've been working on. But I mean, the past 2 weeks, it's really been this conference realignment, and it started with Texas and Oklahoma, and then of course my sources started telling me that the ACC and West Virginia talking. It's West Virginia is going to the ACC, and the announcement was supposed to be earlier, but then Bob Bowsby sent that letter to the SEC, so everybody's kind of walking on eggshells right now. But I do expect, at least within this college football season, that whenever the dust settles, the Big 12 will be no more, and we'll know where everybody is. And I think Notre Dame does go to the ACC. And also, big day yesterday. I hit 3,000 subscribers, so I'm pretty excited about that. And I know I've already thanked you, but I wanted to thank you on camera because you definitely helped, especially coming on with that live show. That was one of my best live shows that I've ever had. That was an amazing live show, and we haven't looked back since. So been really busy, but I can't wait till the college football season. I'm hoping that this Delta variant for this COVID that they're talking about doesn't affect crowd attendance, because that's the big thing that I'm looking forward to. I'm actually planning on going to the West Virginia Tech game and the West Virginia Texas game. I gotta get one more horns down before they leave the Big 12. So I'm hoping that that doesn't get all messed up, because as of right now, it's gonna be full capacity. And I'm telling you, man, I don't know if you've ever been to Morgantown, but whenever it's a big game, full capacity, they cram more people in there than what they're supposed to cram in there, and it gets loud. It gets loud.
I have not been to Morgantown, but yes, I've done most of my work in the SEC. I was down there for 7 years, covering a few different teams there.
I'll take care of the tickets, gas, whatever, food. I'll take care of it. Let's do it, man. Let's go to a game in Morgantown.
We'll have to do that sometime. I get a lot of very nice invites, and that certainly is another one. My issue during a college football Saturday is that I got to be here locked in on everything at the same time. So I did take advantage of that. A couple of years ago, I went down to the Miami, Florida game. The Gators and the Canes played a week 0 game. So that was the only game in town that really meant anything. So I went down to Orlando to check that one out.
Well, if you think about it, though, if you went with me, I'm a fellow YouTuber. I know what it's all about. You really wouldn't have to worry about that. In fact, what we could do is we could turn it into what we're doing now, except we'd be in the same room. So we could actually almost have like an ESPN type of setup where we're, co-hosting with each other in the same room. Telling you, I think we're on to something right there.
Okay. Yeah. I would love to visit some other stadiums. I've never been to Morgantown.
Oh yeah. Have you ever had a pepperoni roll, a West Virginia pepperoni roll?
I've had a pepperoni roll.
Yes, but have you had a West Virginia pepperoni roll? No, one that's made in West Virginia.
Man,
you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. You are gonna love it. Hey, as far as the conference realignment, okay, so we have Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. I'm going to go ahead and call it. West Virginia is going to the ACC, and I'm hearing that there's a high probability of. Sorry, that was my cat. A high probability of Kansas and Iowa State going to the Big Ten, and Kansas State and Texas Tech going to the Pac-12. That would leave Baylor, TCU, and Oklahoma State. Now, hypothetical world. all that goes down. How do you see the future of TCU, Baylor, and Oklahoma State? To me, Oklahoma State is too high of a commodity to waste. They have to go. They have to go to one of these Power Four conferences. But who would they bring in with them?
Yeah. So in regards to the Big Ten and where they stand on all this, I believe that the Big Ten is not going to take in any schools unless they get a pretty good payday out of it potentially. There's got to be a big payoff one way or the other. And I don't think, these are a lot of guesses and projections, I don't think that Kansas basketball has enough pull to be that for the Big Ten. I don't believe. Obviously, the football doesn't add anything. They already blew that 7 or 8 years ago by adding Rutgers and Maryland when they were thinking cable TV markets and not thinking football and not thinking digital media was going to take over as much as it has. So Iowa State is a decent fit geographically again, but I think college football fans get a little bit too wrapped up in what's going on right now. Iowa State is not the football commodity year to year to decade to decade to decade that it is right this second. Yes, it looks good right now, but what is it really adding to the Big Ten? There are estimates that the SEC's revenue payout being in the $68 million range per team goes to somewhere, even taking on Oklahoma and Texas and having to distribute the money 2 more ways, still jumps to like in the 90s, to where if the Big Ten takes on Kansas and Iowa State from a football standpoint, they're probably minimizing the amount of money that they can give everyone. So I have never professed to be one that can play along and determine these moves. But
Yeah.
I don't think that the Big Ten's going to go that route with those two in particular.
Do you think it's more likely that the AAC maybe reaches out and tries to pick off the remaining
Yes.
Big 12, whoever's left, or the Big 12 remains intact and they kind of pick and choose from the AAC? Because I went the route, I thought it would be the AAC picking up some teams, but my subscribers actually made a good point to me. Wouldn't it be easier for the Big 12 to stay together with all that money and for them to poach off the AAC? But I don't think the playoff committee would like that because of that 12-team format. So the more I think about it, I think it would be the AAC picking up the Big 12 teams, keeping in mind the 12-team format expansion.
Yeah. So my initial thought in regards to how does the Big 12 survive, and I posted a video on this immediately to say this is almost a race between the Big 12 and the American Conference, because they're almost on equal footing now, because Texas and Oklahoma meant that much to the Big 12. So financially and from a football standpoint on the field, you're looking at 2 very close commodities. So and the dominoes fall. Once they fall, they start to fall fast when a league crumbles, just like the Big East, where either the Big 12 is going to say, okay, we want to survive, and we've got 8 of us. We can't survive as we currently stand. So we're going to run out there and talk to Houston and Boise State and Memphis and all these schools, especially the ones that geographically make sense, like Houston and SMU and Memphis in particular. And so if we can add them, if we can give them enough incentive to convince them to come together, then maybe we reestablish and fortify our conference before it gets picked off. Because if you're sitting at 8, like the Big 12, and you've already lost 2, and the American Conference says, we're in a good position already, let's go grab TCU in the Dallas market, or whomever they deem to be the best selections from the Big 12. And if you're sitting at 8 in the Big 12 and you get picked off 1 or 2, well, it's pretty much over, because once you lose those couple and you're down to 5 or 6, then the perception is you're done, you're crumbling, you're getting picked apart, as opposed to getting in front of it, fortifying the league, getting it back up to 10 or 12. And it's not going to be what it was, and it's not going to be able to compete with the other four, but at least it's a sixth conference in a sense. Well, it would still be the fifth conference, but not
I
anything
think you
close
hit
to
the
what
nail
it
on
is
the
now.
head right there. I think if the Big 12 somehow does stay together, I think the best case scenario for the Big 12, keeping in mind they lost Texas and Oklahoma, is being the best group of 5, 6, whatever you want to call it, conference, kind of like the AAC is now. They would have to steal teams. They would have to steal some big names from the Big 10 or some big names from the ACC. Whoever to stay at the Power 5. That's not happening. So best case scenario for the Big 12 is they do stay together, but they're only the best group of whatever you want to call it conference. And that's why I'm not necessarily buying this thing from Bob Bowlesby saying, the remaining 8 members, we're fortified. We've come together stronger than ever. We're going to get through this. No, they already know that the best case scenario for the Big 12 is they're not going to be a Power 5 conference anymore. It's the writing is on the wall. They don't have the equity to be a Power 5 conference anymore. And the teams know it, and that's why I think the Big 12, the remaining teams are not going to stick together. The AAC will pick apart, whatever's left. West Virginia, ACC, we already know Texas, Oklahoma to the SEC. Everybody else is up for grabs. The Big 12 is done as we know it.
Well, what's funny about solidarity in these situations is we hear how angry and bitter and resentful these Big 12 teams are at Texas and Oklahoma. And I get it. I totally get it. They have jeopardized your brand and they have jeopardized your situation as a football power. But if you're Iowa State or Kansas, you could walk out of that room in these Big 12 meetings where they're pounding their fists and talking about solidarity and we're sticking together and they betrayed us and everything else. But if you walk out of that room and you're the AD or a chancellor at the University of Kansas and you're hearing from the Big Ten commissioner, well, you suddenly go from, I'm sticking up for the Big 12 and it's, we're going down to the death to, well, we're going to leave for a big payday. So you're going to do the same thing. Yep. And then the other part in this is I think that these, what might be taking some time here, possibly, is that if you're UCF or Cincinnati or Memphis or any of the teams that we just mentioned in the American Conference, they're in a really good situation for what they are. The American Conference is by far the best group of 5. And it does have some arguments. I went to the group of 5 or the American Conference media days like 3 or 4 times in the last 4 or 5 years. And that is the theme of every media days is the conference commissioner, Mike Oresco, I think's his name. He goes to the podium and he just will start going through bowl statistics and results and every conceivable stat that he's put together to campaign that they are truly a Power 6 conference.
Yeah.
So they are definitely the best. I don't know that they're that good, but they're definitely there. So I don't think an SMU, Houston, fill in the blank is going to go running to the Big 12 just because the Big 12 calls. But I think what might be taking time is if the Big 12 can say, we'll take 4 of you and they all come as a package deal and they're all talking to each other. Let's say it's Cincinnati, Memphis, Houston, and SMU, and they're all talking to each other and saying, okay, if you go and you go and you go and you, and we all know we're going to solidify the conference together, then we'll go together, as opposed to SMU just saying, well, we're not going to give up an American Conference slot where we're secure and go to a dying Big 12.
You hit that on the head. And that's one thing that people can't wrap their minds around is, what we see on the field is Oklahoma and Texas bitter rivals, but they went in on this together to the SEC. And I think the thing that really rubbed people the wrong way is they didn't give the Big 12 a chance to counter. It was like they went behind closed doors, told the SEC, hey, we're doing this, this, and this, and it's a done deal. They didn't come back to the Big 12 and say, all right, so the SEC has this on the table. Can you match it, or even a little bit of a sweeter deal? That didn't happen. They just went the SEC behind the Big 12's back, got it done, come right back and say, well, sorry, we're going on to the SEC. I think that's what's rubbed people the wrong way the most is how they did it. I don't blame them for going to the SEC, not at all. The SEC is the strongest conference. We all know that. They're right up there with the Big Ten as far as making money. So, and Texas, Oklahoma, strong brands, very strong brands. So they're going to make a lot of money in the SEC. It was how they exited to the SEC that really, aggravates a lot of people. And it almost comes off as arrogance, like, hey, we're Texas, we're Oklahoma, we can do whatever we want. And that's really what it was. If we didn't want to give the Big 12 a chance to counter, we're not going to do it. They didn't. So it was basically flexing their brand muscles. That's what this move looked like. We all know it was about money, but the way they did it comes off as them being arrogant and flexing the brand muscle that they have.
Absolutely. And what hurts college football, and we experienced it during COVID, and now we're experiencing it with this, is that there's not a governing body. It's not the NFL. The NFL is not going to let the AFC East sabotage itself by losing teams, adding teams. It's one entity. It's always going to make the best moves for the entire system. So if college football was run by one governing body, they would be like, whoa, let's restructure the whole thing, and we'll take into account money and competitive balance and geography, and they could construct the whole thing, and it would be the governing body would work with the individual schools and conferences to figure out, okay, what's going to work for all of us to keep this competitively balanced, where the money makes sense and nobody's getting too rich to where it's derogatory to the sport. But that doesn't exist. So every conference is out for itself. And so you can't blame the SEC and you can't blame Oklahoma and Texas, but it's not good for the sport.
Yeah, I mean, we're college football fanatics. We love college football, but the NFL is definitely set up way better than college football. They're trying to make money for everybody. College football is not that way. And I think that's one of the reasons why eventually the NCAA will be phased out. Think about it. What do they do? Nothing. Last year, COVID happened. What did they do? Whatever y'all want to do, conference by conference. We're not making any rules, any mandates, whatever. Y'all come out. If you want to play, whatever. How many ever games? That's up to y'all. All they do is investigate and hand out punishments whenever they feel like it. And even the punishments aren't consistent. So I really don't see any use for the NCAA. And especially since this NIL thing has been passed, I mean, seriously, what does the NCAA do anymore besides, quote, investigate and then hand out those punishments that are not consistent? Nothing. So we are going to phase. I see it coming. We are going to phase out of the NCAA. And I even saw something released from ESPN today, where they're coming up with this committee. I forget what they called it. Maybe you know what it's called, but I forget what it's called. But they're coming up with I want to say 12 members, but it might be more than that, of an actual governing body. I don't know what they called it. Can't remember, but pretty much transitioning away from the NCAA. So all this happening at once, I think is a big telltale sign that the NCAA's days are definitely numbered.
For sure. And the COVID situation and the struggle that each conference had in determining whether to play and what their approach was going to be, I think was very enlightening about how they all operate and what the priorities are. The
I
SEC.
had a heyday with that on my YouTube channel.
What's that?
I had a heyday with that on my YouTube channel when that happened. Oh man.
Absolutely.
I was able to whip the NCAA up on that one.
Yeah. The SEC was hell bent. We're going to play. Not that we're not doing the right things and going through the protocols and testing and doing everything but our mindset is we are playing.
Right.
And then the ACC, they're so closely attached, both geographically and in their rivalries and the whole deal, that the ACC kind of just came along with that, or at least that was the perception, that they were right in step with the SEC. And then the Big 12 typically has a pretty weak perception out there in terms of, but they see those two saying they're going to play, and the Big 12 waited a little. There was a few day gap or a week or whatever it was, but before the Big 12 said, yeah, we're going to play. Our mindset, we're going to play until proven otherwise, we're going to play. Then you had the Pac-12 on the other end of the spectrum that was like, we're not playing. We're going to try to set something up for the spring. We're not playing. What I thought was fascinating. So that showed us the importance of football and what the mindset was going to be for each conference. The interesting one was the Big Ten, because the Big Ten, I think, showed its colors in that there is a huge gap between the academia, the elites, the money, the institutions, and then the working class.
Yeah.
Because the rule, the mindset out of the gate was the academia said, we're not playing. And then there was a huge uproar because that's Big Ten football country. So the players and the coaches and the parents and the fans and all those millions of Big Ten football fans were like, hell no, we are playing. And then you saw the fight. You saw no other fight like that in any other conference. That's where there was a fight between academia and everybody else.
I think that's why, as off last year was with the COVID season, it was a big time aha moment. It kind of rolled back the curtain onto, what's really going on as far as the NCAA and college football. There's really no rules as far as, everybody together. It's definitely conference by conference. And now with the recent events, it's almost like it's team by team now because, Oklahoma and Texas, that they just went behind their own conference back, made a deal with another conference, didn't give the Big 12 a chance to counter, and, they're gone. So there's a lot of things that we learned over the past year. The proverbial hard lesson. Yeah, it was a tough lesson, but I think it was a good thing because it pulled back the curtain and let us all see what's really going on. The NCAA really doesn't have any type of control, and it is, fend for yourself, and we need to phase out of the NCAA.
So let's get to your boys in Morgantown and what they're going to do here in 2021. So you might like me a little bit better after I tell you this. So I do the Michigan podcast. They invite me on every Tuesday. And we did over-unders this week. And I have yet to release my West Virginia record prediction. Have you done your predictions? Have you released your picks?
I have.
Okay, so your picks are out there. I'm releasing them team by team, and I'm a little bit behind. All this expansion stuff. And so I'm way behind. I got a lot of work to do. And then I keep doing these crazy live streams all over the place. And I've got like 50 teams to do record predictions on. But anyway, I did give a pretty strong indication of what I thought of West Virginia, because maybe you can help me out on this. Is the over under, it can't be 5.5. It must be 6.5. Yes, 6.5. And so our friend Steve Dace on Michigan Podcast, he took the under. I vehemently took the over. And that's all I'll say, because my prediction has yet to be released, but I at least have West Virginia winning 7.
Well, real quick, the comment that's on the screen, West Virginia did nothing in the Big 12. That was more Dana Holgorsen. If you look at West Virginia as a whole, top 20 winningest program in total wins and winning percentage, Dana Holgorsen was a bad coach. So everything you thought you knew about West Virginia under Dana Holgorsen, you're going to have to flush it. And Neil Brown is a great head coach, and we're starting to win football games again. And we're doing what we're capable of doing in the recruiting class, top 20 recruiting class. The best that Neil Brown could do, or Dana Holgorsen, top 35, maybe. So you're going to see what West Virginia can really do under Neil Brown, and he's already turning the ship around. But as far as for this year,
before you get to that, I'm curious, did you like the Holgorsen hire, and at what point did you think he was a bad? Okay.
The reason I knew why they hired him too, it was because West Virginia was going into the Big 12. So they thought by getting a Big 12 person in the head coach that it would, ease West Virginia into the Big 12. I get the rationale, but the hire itself, I didn't like. I thought he would have been a great offensive coordinator. Let me rephrase it. I did like the hire because they hired him as an offensive coordinator. That was fine. He knows his X's and O's, but he doesn't relate to players very well. He's a loose cannon, and he lets the emotions get the best of him. He can't make good decisions under the stress of the moment. So as far as a head coach, no, I did not like it whenever they promoted him to head coach, especially whenever they made it permanent because, we whipped Clemson in the Orange Bowl. That was a great moment, good feel-good moment, but you don't hire a coach off of one game. That's not how you do it. So I didn't like it off the bat. And whenever West Virginia had that 10-win season, I was telling my fellow Mountaineer fans, I said, guys, this proves that we need to fire this guy. They're like, are you crazy? We just had a 10-win season. I'm like, yes, but we had the talent to go undefeated, and we beat all the scrub teams we were supposed to beat, and we got spanked by, the elite teams in the Big 12. I think it was Oklahoma and Oklahoma State that year. And I said, when we get to the bowl and play Miami, we're going to get whooped again. What happened? We got whooped again. It was 31-14, I think, 31-14 or 31-17. So yeah, it was. I didn't like him at all. He did not recruit well. He did not relate to the players. He set West Virginia back 10 years. We're pretty much starting back at 2011.
I usually remember scores. For some reason, I thought there was a 16 there.
You might be right. It might be right there in the middle.
34-16, something like that. Anyway,
yeah,
doesn't matter.
Bad. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, so you're talking about the season. Well, that was 2016.
2016, yeah.
Was that the season that West Virginia almost won the Big 12, that you lost to Oklahoma like 61-58 on that crazy game?
I think that was the same year. I know we lost to Oklahoma. We had a chance to win the Big 12 when we lost to Oklahoma. I don't know if it was that game. I'm not sure if it was that game. It might be, but we definitely did lose to Oklahoma and missed out on the Big 12 championship.
I got to think that recruiting would improve in the ACC because you're on an island right now. The Big 12's in the Midwest, and you're on this island.
Thinking in reverse, hey, since now we're in the Midwest, now we can, increase our footprint in the Midwest. No, it's totally the opposite. Nobody is, foaming at the mouth to get to West Virginia, that live out in Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, you might be able to get one here and there, but that's not where West Virginia's strong recruiting grounds are. Our strong recruiting grounds, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Florida, and then along the Atlantic seaboard. Florida is a great spot for West Virginia. And, getting to the ACC, you got Miami, Florida State. It stretches all the way down. Perfect fit. And I did a video on that, actually. If, and I'm not saying they have a choice, but if West Virginia were to have a choice between the Big Ten and the ACC, would you choose expanding your recruiting grounds with the Big Ten or increasing your current recruiting grounds in the ACC? And I know the Big Ten would be more money, but I think the ACC would just be a better fit. It would increase the value of our current recruiting grounds, and it's a more winnable conference. I mean, it is what it is. I know the ACC isn't considered one of the best conferences. I understand that. But whenever you're a team coming into a conference, you're looking at a situation where you want to win immediately. And I think the ACC presents itself as a situation to where West Virginia can win immediately.
Yeah, it is an interesting debate. The Big Ten is a much better conference than the ACC, and I get a lot of people on here that don't like to hear that, but those are the facts right now. That could change.
Nebraska thought they were making a great decision as far as, building their football power, going from the Big 12 to the Big Ten. And what's happened, they just get smacked around every year. It's not necessarily a great decision immediately jumping into a conference that much better. And it came back and it's still biting Nebraska in the rear end. And I like Nebraska. I don't have anything against Nebraska. I remember the old Tom Osborne teams. Those were some great teams. Nebraska is a shell of itself right now.
Yeah, and like you say, I just can't imagine that any player growing up in Texas or Oklahoma, somewhere in the Midwest, that has their heart set on going, let's say, to Oklahoma or Texas, they get turned down, that they're going to be like, well, I want to stay in the Big 12. I'm going to go to West Virginia. No, they're not going to do that.
Then the opposite. So you're trying to recruit in your current recruiting grounds. Pennsylvania, Florida. All your current recruiting grounds. Why would you go to West Virginia if all your road games? Your closest road games is Ames, Iowa, which is like 1,600 miles away. Why would you choose West Virginia if you have an offer? And I hate even saying this, but it's the best comparison that I can come up with. You have an offer from Pitt, who's less than 100 miles north of Morgantown, and you can play at home. I mean, I wouldn't blame a recruit for choosing Pitt over West Virginia in that scenario. Now, once West Virginia gets into the ACC, they're going to pick West Virginia over Pitt, especially with the coach that we have.
It definitely makes sense. Definitely makes sense. All right, man. We appreciate you stopping by. This was a whole lot of fun kicking around some college football tonight.
Oh, yeah. Anytime, man. I had a lot of fun. This was great. Sorry if I rambled and ranted too much. That happens.
No. Not at all. Not at all. And I want everyone to make sure that if you don't follow the Golden Blue Dude, that you do that immediately. So head on over to his YouTube channel. There it is. It's easy to remember, Golden Blue Dude. And I did my best to catch the right blue on the fly. I know I didn't quite hit it, but
it's close. It's a little too light, but
I didn't go find the color code.
Look, I couldn't find the right.
There we go.
So you're good. You're good.
We're matching the mic.
There you go.
Matching the mic, and want to let everyone know a few last notes here that we're going to do a 24-hour. I must be out of my mind. We're going to do a 24-hour live stream leading into the college football season. So we're going to be on here for live coverage on that Thursday night, the Thursday of week 1. And we're going to be on for 24 straight hours. Now, I'm going to take a few naps. I'm not going to be able to make it for 24 hours. If I sit here for like 2.5 hours during a live stream and I get up, man, I'm about to, my hips are practically locked up. So,
our mutual friend Joey, right? He mentioned what you're doing. So I'm offering my services. If you need a nap, whatever, I can fill in for you, and I'll try not to let the views go down to 0. I'll do my best to at least keep you at least one viewer. How about that?
You'll probably spike the views. I also want to let people
hit me up on the email.
Yeah, so I will hit you up on that because I'm going to need a few naps. So people think as soon as I announce 24 consecutive hours that I'm going to be sitting here for 24 hours. That ain't happening.
That would be crazy.
That would not be a pretty sight. If you want to see me punch drunk and probably, you want to see my head slam straight on the desk, I've stayed up for some crazy durations of time in my day, but that's a bit much doing this. Yeah. Sitting here.
By the end of it, you'd probably be talking about the 1970s and 80s. You wouldn't even be talking about 2021 anymore.
Yeah, who knows what I'd be talking about at that point. So that's one thing. We're also doing some post-game shows. We're lining up post-game shows on our team-specific channels, which the Golden Blue Dude was kind enough to point out earlier that we've got it's 22 or 23 channels. So at this point, we're doing Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Miami, Florida State, Texas A&M, Florida, and we're looking at USC and Oregon, hopefully, and Virginia Tech, and an SEC show. So we believe that we've got all those teams covered for post game.
I got one question for you. So, have you looked over the coaches poll?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I'm not talking about West Virginia. I'm not homering on this question. Okay. So there was one team that I did not see in the top 25 that I thought should be in the top 25. Okay. And unless I completely missed it, and that's Arizona State. I mean, Are they figuring on that these allegations are going to mess with them that much that they're not even a top 25 team?
That was my first comment. So I posted a video with my reaction to the coaches poll, and I talked about the traditional powers that have no leverage at this point to be included, Nebraska and Florida State in those teams, just to give some kind of opinion there. But then I started to focus on, okay, who's missing? And that was the first team I mentioned. I said Arizona State, I believe, is a top 15 or 20 team in the country. Now, with all the scandal going on, that was the team that I thought was missing as well. Utah could certainly. Yeah. I think there's about, I bet if you ran the numbers, because I did for a few years, that we can determine that about 7 of those top 25 teams will not finish in the top 25.
Absolutely.
Something in that range.
And that teams that aren't on there will finish in the top 25. Happens every year. I agree. I just thought, and that's a good point. I just thought that was a glaring omission. Like, how is Arizona State, how is Ole Miss in the top 25 and Arizona State isn't? I think that was the biggest thing that kind of, and I know they expect Ole Miss to do very well, but you can't put Ole Miss in and not put Arizona State in. That's just my opinion. If you're going to put Ole Miss in, you have to put Arizona State in, because I think Arizona State right up there with Ole Miss. Now, the scandal allegations, maybe it does mess with them, but if we're talking about talent and coaching, Arizona State has a good football team, and they have a chance to win the Pac-12 South.
They do. I'm right there with you on that. I do think that Ole Miss gained a lot of cachet bringing in Lane Kiffin. They scored a ton of points last year. They do have Matt Corral back at quarterback. They played Alabama just about as well as anybody did last year, and then they beat Indiana in the bowl game.
Yes.
But, yeah, that was the first team that came to mind for me, too. Arizona State, TCU, you could consider. You could also consider Utah, who was left out of the top 25.
I agree with that as well. Pac-12
or those Mountaineers.
I don't think we're there yet.
Okay.
We finished the season strong, and we will be better. And in one of my bold predictions, I do think West Virginia does crack the top 25 this season. I think it's after we beat Virginia Tech at home, because that'll give us a win on the road against Maryland and then Long Island, and then the home game against Virginia Tech. I think after that game, we'll be in the top 25, but then we'll turn around and lose that top 25 ranking because we'll get smacked around by Oklahoma. But I do think West Virginia will crack the top 25 after going 3-0.
Okay. Good stuff from the Gold and Blue dude right here at the Voice of College Football. So it's great to have you for a first time here. I appreciate you inviting me for a live stream on your channel as well. And you are welcome to come on here anytime and talk up the Mountaineers and college football across the board.
Absolutely, man. Just hit me up and we'll set something up.
Folks, we'll be back at 2:30 Eastern tomorrow on the Oklahoma channel for our Sooners live show. Otherwise, enjoy the videos and head on over to Gold and Blue Dude.
Have a good night, Mark.